Donald Trump, A Comprehensive Overview, Chapter 1, Early Life and Family Background. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York City, the fourth of 5 children born to Frederick Christ Trump and Mary Ann McLeod Trump. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer who built and operated middle-income apartments in Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. Fred Trump's business acumen and aggressive approach to real estate development would profoundly influence his son's future career path. Mary Ann McLeod Trump, Donald's mother, was an immigrant from Scotland who arrived in the United States in 1930. She married Fred Trump in 1936. And together, they built a family in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens, a solidly upper-middle-class enclave that provided young Donald with comfort and privilege, though not the Manhattan sophistication he would later crave. Growing up, Donald Trump was an energetic and assertive child, traits that sometimes got him into trouble. His parents, concerned about his behavior and energy levels, sent him to the New York Military Academy at age 13. This decision proved formative. At the military school in Cornwall, New York, Trump learned discipline, leadership, and competitive drive. He excelled both academically and athletically, becoming a star baseball player and earning respect from his peers and instructors alike. The military academy experience shaped Trump's worldview in lasting ways. He learned to value hierarchy, strength, and winning above all else. The competitive environment suited his personality, and he thrived under the structured discipline. By the time he graduated in 1964, Trump had developed the confidence and commanding presence that would characterize his adult life. After military school, Trump attended Fordham University in the Bronx for 2 years before transferring to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, one of the nation's premier business schools. He graduated in 1968 with a degree in economics. During his college years, Trump received educational deferments from military service, avoiding deployment to Vietnam. After graduation, he received a medical deferment for bone spurs, a detail that would become controversial decades later during his political career. Chapter 2: Building the Trump Empire. Upon graduating from Wharton, Donald Trump joined his father's real estate company, then called Elizabeth Trump's Son. He immediately began pushing for expansion beyond the outer boroughs into Manhattan, seeing the island as the ultimate prize for a real estate developer with ambition. Fred Trump was initially cautious about this expansion, having built his fortune on reliable, middle-income housing in the outer boroughs, but Donald was insistent. In 1971, Donald Trump officially took control of the company and renamed it the Trump Organization. His first major project was the transformation of the dilapidated Commodore Hotel near Grand Central Terminal into the Grand Hyatt, completed in 1980. This project established Trump's pattern of leveraging government tax breaks, forming partnerships with established brands, and generating publicity that far exceeded the actual financial investment. The Grand Hyatt was a success, and announced Trump's arrival in Manhattan real estate. The crown jewel of Trump's early career was Trump Tower, a 58-story skyscraper on Fifth Avenue that opened in 1983. The building featured a stunning 6-story atrium with a waterfall, expensive retail shops, and luxury condominiums. Trump moved his own residence to the top floors, creating a gilded penthouse that became synonymous with his brand of ostentatious luxury. The building's distinctive bronze-tinted glass facade made it an instant Manhattan landmark. Throughout the 1980s, Trump expanded aggressively. He purchased the New Jersey Generals of the United States Football League in 1983, though the league folded 3 years later. He opened casinos in Atlantic City, including Trump Plaza in 1984 and Trump Taj Mahal in 1990, which he called the 8th wonder of the world. He bought the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan for $407 million in 1988. He even ventured into the airline business, purchasing the Eastern Air Shuttle and rebranding it Trump Shuttle in 1989. This period also saw Trump become a celebrity beyond the business world. He was a fixture in New York tabloids, his personal life scrutinized as much as his business deals. His first marriage to Ivana Trump, a Czech model and businesswoman, produced 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. However, the marriage dissolved amid tabloid coverage of Trump's affair with actress Marla Maples, whom he would marry in 1993. They had one daughter, Tiffany, before divorcing in 1999. Chapter 3: Financial Troubles and Comeback. The early 1990s brought Trump face-to-face with financial catastrophe. His aggressive expansion, funded largely by debt, coincided with an economic recession and a collapse in the real estate market. By 1990, Trump was nearly $4 billion in debt and personally liable for $975 million of it. His casinos were losing money, his airline was failing, and several of his properties faced foreclosure. The Trump Taj Mahal, opened with great fanfare in 1990, filed for bankruptcy protection in 1991. Trump's other Atlantic City casinos followed suit over the next decade, with Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts filing for bankruptcy in 2004, and Trump Entertainment Resorts doing so again in 2009. The Plaza Hotel was sold in 1995. The Trump Shuttle was absorbed by U.S. Airways in 1992, after failing to turn a profit. During this dark period, Trump negotiated with nearly 100 banks to restructure his debts. He sold the yacht he'd purchased from Saudi arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi. He sold his airline. He put himself on a personal budget of $450,000 per month, a figure that seemed extravagant to most Americans, but represented severe austerity for someone accustomed to his lifestyle. Through aggressive negotiation, celebrity, and arguably some luck in economic timing, Trump managed to avoid personal bankruptcy. The comeback began in the mid-1990s. Rather than building and operating properties, Trump shifted his business model toward licensing his name. Developers around the world paid to put Trump on their buildings, allowing Trump to profit from his brand without risking capital. This proved genius. Trump-branded buildings appeared in cities across America and worldwide, from Panama to the Philippines, from Toronto to Turkey. Trump also found new revenue streams. He hosted professional wrestling events at his casinos. He operated the Miss Universe, Miss USA, and Miss Teen USA pageants from 1996 to 2015. He wrote business books, starting with The Art of the Deal in 1987, which became a bestseller and cemented his image as a business guru. He made cameo appearances in movies and television shows, becoming a pop culture fixture. The ultimate vehicle for Trump's comeback was reality television. In 2004, he began hosting The Apprentice, a reality competition show where contestants competed for a job in the Trump Organization. The show's signature phrase, "You're fired," became a cultural catchphrase. The Apprentice and its successor, Celebrity Apprentice, ran for 14 seasons, earning Trump approximately $214 million and introducing him to millions of Americans who might never have encountered his real estate empire. The show portrayed Trump as a decisive, successful businessman, an image that proved invaluable when he entered politics. Chapter 4: Personal Life and Public Persona. Donald Trump's personal life has been as public as his business career. His 3 marriages and various relationships have provided endless fodder for tabloid coverage. After divorcing Marla Maples in 1999, Trump began dating Slovenian model Melania Knauss, whom he married in 2005. The wedding, held at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, was a lavish affair attended by celebrities and politicians. In 2006, Melania gave birth to their son, Barron Trump, making Donald Trump a father for the 5th time at age 60. Trump's children have played significant roles in his business and political careers. Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump all joined the Trump Organization and became executive vice presidents. Ivanka, particularly, became her father's most trusted advisor, eventually serving as a senior advisor in his presidential administration. His sons took on management of the family business during Trump's presidency, though critics argued the arrangement presented conflicts of interest. Trump's lifestyle embodied excess and luxury. His tastes ran to gold fixtures, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers. Mar-a-Lago, the Palm Beach estate he purchased in 1985, became his Florida residence, and later the Winter White House during his presidency. The property, originally built by serial heiress Marjorie Merriweather Post, features 126 rooms, sprawling gardens, and oceanfront views. Trump converted it into a private club in 1995, charging hefty membership fees while maintaining his own residence on the property. Trump cultivated a specific public image, the aggressive winner who never apologizes, never admits defeat, and fights every battle to the end. He mastered the art of self-promotion, understanding that controversy generates publicity, and publicity generates value. He branded everything from steaks to vodka to university courses. Though many of these ventures failed, Trump University, in particular, became the subject of lawsuits alleging fraud, eventually settling for $25 million in 2016. His communication style was distinctive: short sentences, simple words, superlatives, and repetition. Whether speaking at press conferences, writing on social media, or engaging with journalists, Trump employed a direct, often combative tone that resonated with supporters who saw him as refreshingly authentic and offended critics who viewed him as crude and undignified. He had an uncanny ability to dominate news cycles and keep attention focused on himself. Chapter 5. Entry into Politics. Trump flirted with politics for decades before seriously pursuing office. He considered running for president in 2000 as a Reform Party candidate, but withdrew before the primaries. He publicly contemplated runs in other election cycles, generating publicity but never committing. Many observers dismissed these as publicity stunts designed to boost his brand and television ratings. In 2011, Trump became a prominent voice in the birther movement, publicly questioning whether President Barack Obama was born in the United States and demanding to see his birth certificate. Most mainstream politicians avoided or condemned the conspiracy theory, but Trump embraced it, appearing frequently on Fox News and other conservative media outlets to raise doubts about Obama's legitimacy as president. The controversy generated enormous media attention, raising Trump's profile among conservative voters while damaging his reputation among Democrats and many independents. The birther controversy revealed Trump's willingness to embrace positions that energized his base, regardless of factual accuracy or elite opinion. When Obama eventually released his long-form birth certificate in 2011 and mocked Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, some observers speculated that Trump's humiliation at that event motivated his eventual presidential campaign. Trump himself has denied this, but the theory persists. On June 16, 2015, Trump descended the golden escalator at Trump Tower to announce his candidacy for the Republican presidential nomination. His announcement speech immediately generated controversy by characterizing many Mexican immigrants as criminals and rapists. Political analysts across the spectrum predicted his campaign would quickly implode. They were wrong. Trump's campaign defied conventional political wisdom. He spent relatively little on advertising, instead earning billions in free media coverage through controversial statements and confrontational press conferences. He bypassed traditional political gatekeepers, communicating directly with voters through Twitter and large rallies. He attacked his Republican primary opponents with nicknames and insults: Low Energy Jeb, Little Marco, Lion Ted. The tactics seemed crude, but they proved devastatingly effective. Chapter 6. The 2016 Presidential Campaign. The Republican primary field in 2016 was historically crowded, with 17 candidates including experienced governors, senators, and political dynasts. Most observers expected establishment favorites like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, or Scott Walker to secure the nomination. Instead, Trump dominated from the beginning. Trump's campaign platform centered on themes of American decline and the need for strong leadership to restore greatness. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," implied that the country had lost its way and needed to return to some earlier, better state. He promised to build a wall on the Mexican border and make Mexico pay for it. He called for a temporary ban on Muslims entering the United States. He vowed to bring manufacturing jobs back from China and renegotiate trade deals he characterized as disasters. He pledged to drain the swamp of Washington corruption. Throughout the primary campaign, Trump survived controversies that would have destroyed traditional candidates. He mocked Senator John McCain for being captured in Vietnam. He feuded with Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly after she asked him about past derogatory comments about women. He was slow to disavow support from white nationalist David Duke. A leaked 2005 Access Hollywood recording captured him making vulgar comments about women, including boasting about sexual assault. Each time, analysts predicted his campaign's end. Each time, his support among core voters remained solid or even increased. Trump secured the Republican nomination by May 2016, having effectively won the primary through a combination of plurality victories in multi-candidate races and his ability to earn constant media coverage. The Republican National Convention in Cleveland was contentious, with some establishment Republicans refusing to attend and Trump's defeated primary rival Ted Cruz declining to endorse him in his convention speech. Nevertheless, Trump accepted the nomination with a speech painting a dark picture of American carnage and promising that he alone could fix the nation's problems. The general election pitted Trump against Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, U.S. Senator, and First Lady. Clinton was one of the most experienced and qualified candidates ever to seek the presidency, but she carried significant baggage. Many voters, particularly men, and particularly white voters, expressed distrust or dislike of her. Her use of a private email server while Secretary of State became a major campaign issue, especially after FBI Director James Comey held a press conference criticizing her handling of classified information while declining to recommend charges, then sent a letter to Congress 11 days before the election announcing a review of additional emails. Trump's campaign was chaotic and unconventional. His rallies drew enormous crowds who chanted, "Lock her up," regarding Clinton. He encouraged violence against protesters at his events. He refused to release his tax returns, breaking decades of precedent. He claimed the election was rigged and refused to commit to accepting the results if he lost. His campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, resigned amid revelations about his work for pro-Russian politicians in Ukraine, yet none of this prevented Trump from maintaining competitive polling numbers. The final week saw Trump slightly behind in most polls. Virtually every major forecaster predicted a Clinton victory, with some giving her over a 90% chance of winning. Media organizations prepared stories about the death of the Republican Party and Trump's inevitable return to business and entertainment. Chapter 7: Shock, Victory, and Transition. On November 8, 2016, Donald Trump won the presidency in one of the greatest political upsets in American history. While Clinton won the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes, Trump won the Electoral College 304 to 227, capturing the crucial swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by narrow margins. These three traditionally Democratic states in the industrial Midwest, the so-called Blue Wall, had not been expected to flip to the Republican column. Trump's coalition consisted of overwhelming support from white voters without college degrees, strong performance among white evangelical Christians, and the traditional Republican base of business conservatives and older voters. He performed worse than previous Republican nominees among college-educated whites, particularly women, and lost decisively among minority voters. His victory was concentrated in rural areas and small cities, while Clinton dominated in major metropolitan areas. The upset triggered shock and recrimination among Democrats and their supporters, who struggled to understand how their well-funded, highly organized campaign with a supremely qualified candidate had lost to a political novice who had violated every rule of conventional campaigning. Republicans, many of whom had expected defeat, suddenly found themselves controlling the White House, Senate, and House of Representatives. Trump's transition to power was rocky. He had little experience with government operations and assembled a team mixing establishment Republicans, family members, and unconventional choices. He selected Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, as chief of staff, signaling a desire to work with the party establishment. But he also appointed Steve Bannon, the chairman of the controversial far-right website Breitbart News, as chief strategist, alarming moderates and Democrats. His cabinet selections mixed conventional Republican choices with controversial figures. He nominated Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, with no government experience, as Secretary of State. He chose retired General James Mattis as Secretary of Defense and retired General John Kelly as Secretary of Homeland Security. He nominated Senator Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, despite Sessions' controversial record on civil rights issues. He selected his campaign manager Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education, despite her lack of public school experience. Most controversially, Trump maintained his business interests and refused to divest from the Trump Organization. instead placing his assets in a trust managed by his sons. Ethics experts across the political spectrum warned of unprecedented conflicts of interest, but Trump argued that the arrangement was legal and sufficient. Throughout his presidency, Trump continued to profit from his businesses, including from domestic and foreign government officials staying at Trump properties. Chapter 8: The Presidency, Year 1. Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States on January 20, 2017. His inaugural address doubled down on the themes of his campaign, painting a picture of American carnage and promising to put America first in all decisions. The speech was notable for its dark tone and populist rhetoric, unusual for an inaugural address. Crowd size immediately became a controversy, with Trump claiming without evidence that his inauguration drew the largest audience ever, despite clear photographic evidence to the contrary. Trump's first year in office was characterized by chaos, controversy, and a steep learning curve. He signed a flurry of executive orders in his first days, including directives to begin planning the border wall, withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, and impose a travel ban on visitors from several Muslim-majority countries. The travel ban triggered immediate legal challenges and protests at airports across the country, beginning a pattern of courts blocking or limiting Trump's executive actions. His relationship with the media was immediately adversarial. Trump coined the term fake news to describe coverage he disliked, accused journalists of being enemies of the people, and frequently attacked specific reporters and outlets, particularly CNN and the New York Times. His press secretaries, first Sean Spicer and later Sarah Huckabee Sanders, held contentious press briefings characterized by arguments with journalists. Trump himself communicated extensively through Twitter, often making policy announcements or attacking critics via tweet. Internally, the administration suffered from unprecedented turnover. National Security Advisor Michael Flynn resigned after just 24 days for lying about his contacts with Russian officials. FBI Director James Comey was fired in May 2017, with Trump initially claiming the firing was based on Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation, before later stating in a television interview that he was thinking of this Russia thing when he made the decision. The Russia investigation dominated headlines. American intelligence agencies had concluded that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Trump win, a finding Trump repeatedly questioned. After firing Comey, Trump faced the appointment of Robert Mueller, a respected former FBI director, as special counsel to investigate Russian interference and potential coordination with the Trump campaign. The investigation would hang over his presidency for nearly 2 years. Legislatively, Trump's first year saw mixed results. His efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, a key campaign promise, failed dramatically when Senator John McCain cast a late-night thumbs-down vote in July 2017, killing the repeal effort. However, Trump achieved a significant victory in December 2017 with passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which substantially reduced corporate tax rates and provided tax cuts that primarily benefited wealthy Americans. Republicans hailed the law as a triumph. Democrats condemned it as a giveaway to the rich that would explode the deficit. Chapter 9: Foreign Policy and International Relations. Trump's approach to foreign policy was unlike any modern president's. He questioned long-standing alliances, praised authoritarian leaders, withdrew from international agreements, and conducted diplomacy through Twitter. His America First philosophy translated into skepticism toward multilateral institutions and a transactional approach to international relationships. Trump was openly critical of NATO, calling the alliance obsolete, and demanding that European allies increase their defense spending. He had contentious meetings with traditional allies like Germany's Angela Merkel and Canada's Justin Trudeau, while praising autocrats like Russia's Vladimir Putin, Turkey's Recep Erdogan, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. This approach alarmed foreign policy traditionalists across the political spectrum, but resonated with his supporters who viewed the international order as exploiting the United States. On trade, Trump pursued his protectionist agenda aggressively. He imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, triggering retaliation from allies including Canada and the European Union. He engaged in an escalating trade war with China, imposing tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods, while China retaliated in kind. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership and renegotiated NAFTA, emerging with the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which made relatively modest changes to the previous agreement but gave Trump a political victory. His most dramatic foreign policy engagement was with North Korea, after months of escalating rhetoric, with Trump threatening fire and fury and Kim Jong-un threatening nuclear strikes. The two leaders agreed to a historic summit in Singapore in June 2018. Trump and Kim met face-to-face, exchanged pleasantries, and signed a vague agreement about working toward denuclearization. Trump declared the meeting a success and claimed the North Korean nuclear threat was over. Subsequent summits produced no concrete results, and North Korea continued its nuclear weapons program, but Trump maintained that his personal relationship with Kim had prevented war. In the Middle East, Trump took strongly pro-Israel positions, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moving the American embassy there, decisions that broke with decades of American policy and enraged Palestinians. He withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal negotiated by the Obama administration, reimposing sanctions and adopting a maximum pressure campaign against Tehran. He ordered the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in January 2020, nearly triggering war when Iran retaliated with missile strikes on American bases in Iraq. Trump's Syria policy was contradictory and confusing. He ordered missile strikes against Syrian government targets in response to chemical weapons use, but also announced sudden troop withdrawals that alarmed allies and emboldened adversaries. His decision to pull troops from northern Syria in October 2019 abandoned Kurdish allies who had fought alongside Americans against ISIS, allowing Turkey to launch an offensive against the Kurds. Chapter 10: Immigration and the Border Wall. No issue defined Trump's presidency more than immigration. From his campaign announcement through his final days in office, Trump made restricting immigration his signature issue. He characterized immigrants and asylum seekers in dehumanizing terms, claiming they were invading America and bringing crime and drugs. His rhetoric was condemned by immigrant rights advocates and praised by immigration restrictionists who felt previous presidents had been too permissive. The border wall became an obsession. Trump repeatedly promised that Mexico would pay for the wall, a claim Mexican officials consistently rejected. When Mexico refused to pay, Trump sought funding from Congress. Democrats refused, and even many Republicans were skeptical about the wall's effectiveness and cost. This standoff led to the longest government shutdown in American history, from December 2018 to January 2019, as Trump refused to sign spending bills without wall funding. When Congress appropriated far less money than Trump wanted, he declared a national emergency to divert military construction funds to wall building. Legal challenges followed, with courts blocking some of his efforts. By the end of his presidency, Trump had constructed or replaced approximately 450 miles of border barriers, though most replaced existing fencing rather than covering new territory. He never secured payment from Mexico. Trump's administration implemented numerous policies designed to reduce both legal and illegal immigration. The travel ban, eventually upheld by the Supreme Court in modified form, restricted travel from several Muslim-majority countries. The administration drastically reduced refugee admissions to historically low levels. It made it more difficult to obtain work visas and green cards. It attempted to end DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the Obama-era program protecting young immigrants brought to the country as children, though courts blocked full termination of the program. Most controversially, the administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy in spring 2018 that resulted in separating migrant children from their parents at the border. Images of children in detention centers, separated from their parents and held in chain-link enclosures, sparked international outrage. Trump eventually signed an executive order ending the family separation policy under intense pressure, but the damage to America's reputation was severe. Some families remained separated years later, unable to reunite due to inadequate record-keeping. Chapter 11: Supreme Court and Federal Judiciary. One of Trump's most lasting impacts was his transformation of the federal judiciary. During his single term, Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, 54 appeals court judges, and 174 district court judges, moving the federal courts dramatically rightward. These lifetime appointments will influence American law for decades. His first Supreme Court appointment came when Justice Antonin Scalia died in February 2016. Senate Republicans, led by Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, refused to consider President Obama's nominee Merrick Garland, arguing that the next president should fill the vacancy. When Trump won, he nominated Neil Gorsuch, a conservative appeals court judge, who was confirmed in April 2017. Trump's second opportunity came when Justice Anthony Kennedy, the court's swing vote, announced his retirement in June 2018. Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh, another conservative judge. Kavanaugh's confirmation became one of the most contentious in history after Christine Blasey Ford publicly accused him of sexual assault when they were teenagers. Kavanaugh vehemently denied the allegations. After FBI investigation and dramatic testimony from both Kavanaugh and Ford, the Senate confirmed Kavanaugh 50-48, one of the closest Supreme Court votes ever. The third appointment was most controversial. When Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a liberal icon, died in September 2020, just 6 weeks before the presidential election, McConnell immediately moved to confirm a replacement, abandoning the principle he had articulated in 2016 about not confirming justices in election years. Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett, a conservative judge with strong religious convictions. Democrats protested vehemently, but Republicans had the votes. Barrett was confirmed 8 days before the 2020 election. These appointments created a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court in the years following Trump's presidency. This court has issued landmark conservative decisions, including overturning Roe v. Wade and ending the constitutional right to abortion, expanding gun rights, and limiting federal regulatory power. Trump's judicial legacy may prove more enduring than any legislation he signed. Chapter 12. The First Impeachment. On December 18, 2019, the House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump, making him only the third president in American history to be impeached. The charges stemmed from Trump's dealings with Ukraine, specifically a July 25, 2019 phone call between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. A whistleblower complaint revealed that Trump had asked Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, who had served on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. The call came as the Trump administration was withholding nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, aid that Congress had appropriated to help Ukraine defend itself against Russian aggression. Democrats argued that Trump was abusing his power by pressuring a foreign government to investigate his potential political opponent and withholding aid as leverage. Trump released a rough transcript of the call, which he characterized as perfect. The transcript showed Trump saying, "I would like you to do us a favor, though," after Zelensky mentioned purchasing American weapons. Trump asked Zelensky to investigate the Bidens, and also to look into a debunked conspiracy theory about Ukrainian interference in the 2016 election. Democrats saw clear evidence of abuse of power. Republicans argued the conversation was appropriate. The House impeachment inquiry featured testimony from numerous State Department and National Security Council officials who expressed alarm at Trump's actions toward Ukraine. Key witnesses included Acting Ambassador Bill Taylor, Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and National Security Council member Alexander Vindman, all of whom described irregular pressure campaigns and quid pro quo demands. Trump attacked the witnesses, particularly Vindman, a decorated Army officer and Purple Heart recipient. The House voted to impeach Trump on 2 articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The votes were largely along party lines, with no Republicans supporting either article and only a few Democrats opposing. Trump became the first president to be impeached in his first term. The Senate trial in January and February 2020 was a foregone conclusion. Republicans controlled the Senate 53-47, making conviction mathematically unlikely. The trial featured arguments from House impeachment managers and Trump's defense team, but no witnesses testified. On February 5, 2020, the Senate acquitted Trump on both articles. Mitt Romney became the first senator ever to vote to convict a president of his own party, voting guilty on the abuse of power charge. All other Republicans voted to acquit. Chapter 13. COVID-19 Pandemic Response. The COVID-19 pandemic was the defining crisis of Trump's presidency. and his handling of it significantly shaped his legacy and political fortunes. The novel coronavirus emerged in Wuhan, China, in late 2019, and by January 2020, it had spread globally. The first confirmed case in the United States was announced on January 20th, 2020, the third anniversary of Trump's inauguration. Trump's initial response was to downplay the threat. He repeatedly compared COVID-19 to seasonal flu, predicted it would disappear like a miracle, and resisted calls for aggressive containment measures. He praised China's response, and personally thanked President Xi Jinping for his handling of the outbreak. Critics argue that this early period of denial wasted crucial time when the virus could have been contained. As cases multiplied in February and March 2020, Trump's tone shifted. He restricted travel from China, then Europe, though critics noted these restrictions came late and contained many exemptions. On March 13, 2020, Trump declared a national emergency. By mid-March, much of American life had shut down. Schools closed, businesses shuttered, sports leagues suspended seasons, and Americans were told to stay home. Trump's handling of the crisis was erratic. He held daily coronavirus task force briefings that often featured conflicting information, attacks on reporters, and unscientific claims. He promoted unproven treatments like hydroxychloroquine and suggested that injecting disinfectant or using ultraviolet light inside the body might cure COVID-19, comments that medical experts found dangerously irresponsible. He frequently contradicted his own public health advisors, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, the widely respected director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Trump pushed for rapid reopening of the economy, viewing the shutdowns as politically damaging. He pressured governors to lift restrictions, tweeted "Liberate Michigan" and other states with Democratic governors, and held indoor rallies against health guidelines. He resisted mask wearing and mocked those who wore masks, sending a message to his supporters that masks were unnecessary or a sign of weakness. When he finally wore a mask publicly in July 2020, it was treated as news. The administration's response had significant successes and failures. Operation Warp Speed, the public-private partnership to accelerate vaccine development, deserves credit for helping produce multiple effective vaccines in record time. However, the lack of coordinated federal response, the mixed messaging on basic precautions, and Trump's own minimization of the virus contributed to America's devastating death toll. By the time Trump left office, over 400,000 Americans had died from COVID-19, the highest death toll of any nation. Trump himself contracted COVID-19 in October 2020, along with his wife Melania and several White House staff members, following a White House event where few attendees wore masks. Trump was hospitalized at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for 3 days and received aggressive treatment, including experimental antibody therapy. Upon returning to the White House, he appeared on a balcony, removed his mask, and declared that Americans should not let COVID-19 dominate their lives. His supporters saw strength. His critics saw recklessness. Chapter 14. The 2020 Campaign and Election. As the 2020 presidential race approached, Trump faced significant headwinds. His approval ratings remained historically low throughout his presidency, consistently below 50% in most polls. The pandemic had devastated the economy, ending the economic growth Trump had touted as his greatest achievement. The nation was polarized, with massive protests following the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis sparking a reckoning over race and policing. The Democratic primary eventually produced Joe Biden as the nominee. Biden, who had served as vice president under Obama, represented a return to normalcy and stability after Trump's chaos. Biden ran a largely cautious campaign, staying relatively quiet, while Trump dominated headlines, often with self-inflicted controversies. Kamala Harris, a senator from California, became Biden's running mate, making her the first woman of color on a major party ticket. Trump's campaign strategy was similar to 2016, hold large rallies, attack his opponent, and maintain constant media presence. However, the pandemic complicated this approach. Biden largely campaigned virtually due to COVID-19 concerns, while Trump held in-person rallies, often indoors, and without mask requirements. Trump mocked Biden for staying in his basement and questioned his mental fitness. But Biden's caution looked prudent, as COVID-19 cases surged. The campaign featured two main narratives: Biden portrayed Trump as incompetent, divisive, and dangerous, someone who had mishandled the pandemic and needed to be removed to restore normalcy. Trump portrayed Biden as a tool of the radical left, who would destroy suburbs, defund police, and allow chaos to overtake America. Both campaigns spent billions, making 2020 the most expensive election in American history. Trump's mail-in voting conspiracy theories began months before the election. As states expanded vote-by-mail options due to the pandemic, Trump claimed without evidence that mail-in voting was fraudulent and would lead to a rigged election. He encouraged his supporters to vote in person, while Democrats were more likely to vote by mail, creating different voting patterns between the parties. On election night, November 3, 2020, Trump appeared to be leading in several key states, as in-person votes were counted first. Trump declared victory prematurely, claiming that Democrats were trying to steal the election. However, as mail-in ballots were counted over the following days, Biden's margins grew in key swing states. Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan all flipped to Biden. The final result showed Biden winning with 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232, the exact same margin Trump had won by in 2016, which he had called a landslide. Biden won the popular vote by over 7 million votes. The election saw record turnout with over 155 million Americans voting. Chapter 15, Refusal to Concede, and January 6th. Trump refused to concede the election. Instead, he launched an unprecedented effort to overturn the results, claiming without evidence that massive fraud had occurred. His campaign filed dozens of lawsuits in swing states, nearly all of which were dismissed by judges, including many Trump had appointed for lack of evidence. His attorneys, led by Rudy Giuliani, held press conferences making increasingly wild claims about voting machines, Venezuelan conspiracies, and dead people voting, but provided no credible proof. Trump's pressure campaign extended to state officials. He called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and pressured him to find 11,780 votes, the exact number needed to overturn Biden's victory in Georgia. Raffensperger, a Republican, refused. Trump pressured Republican state legislators in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states to overturn their state results or send alternate slates of electors. Most refused, though some went along with schemes to send fake elector certificates to Congress. Attorney General Bill Barr, one of Trump's most loyal cabinet members, publicly stated that the Justice Department had found no evidence of fraud that would change the election outcome. Trump was furious, and Barr resigned in December 2020. Trump continued claiming the election was stolen, a narrative embraced by millions of his supporters despite the lack of evidence. The crisis culminated on January 6, 2021, when Congress met to certify the Electoral College results. Trump held a rally near the White House, telling thousands of supporters that the election had been stolen and that they needed to fight like hell, or, "You're not going to have a country anymore." He urged them to march to the Capitol. Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, called for trial by combat. What followed was the worst attack on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812. Thousands of Trump supporters marched to the Capitol and breached security barriers. They smashed windows, fought with police, and stormed into the building. Lawmakers were evacuated or sheltered in place. Rioters roamed the halls, some chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," after the vice president refused Trump's demand to reject electoral votes. Some carried Confederate flags through the Capitol, others vandalized offices, including that of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. 5 people died in connection with the riot. 1 rioter was shot by Capitol Police. 1 officer died after being attacked, and 3 others died of medical emergencies. Over 140 police officers were injured. The riot delayed the certification for several hours, but Congress reconvened that evening and certified Biden's victory in the early hours of January 7th. Trump's response during the riot was criticized as dangerously slow. He did not call in the National Guard. Vice President Pence and congressional leaders did. Trump's initial statements told rioters, "We love you," and repeated false claims about the stolen election before finally telling them to go home. Days later, he released a video acknowledging there would be a transition of power but continued to maintain the election was fraudulent. Chapter 16, Second Impeachment and Departure. On January 13, 2021, 1 week after the Capitol riot and 1 week before Biden's inauguration, the House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump for the second time. The article of impeachment charged him with incitement of insurrection for his role in provoking the January 6th attack. The vote was 232-197, with 10 Republicans joining all Democrats in voting to impeach. Trump became the only president ever impeached twice, and the only president impeached with bipartisan support. The Senate trial was held after Trump left office in February 2021. Constitutional scholars debated whether a former president could be convicted, but the Senate voted to proceed with the trial. The House impeachment managers presented video evidence of the riot intercut with Trump's speech, arguing he had incited the violence. Trump's lawyers argued his speech was protected by the First Amendment, and that he had told supporters to protest peacefully. On February 13, 2021, the Senate voted 57-43 to convict Trump, short of the two-thirds majority required. 7 Republicans joined all Democrats in voting guilty, making it the most bipartisan impeachment conviction vote in history. Senator Mitch McConnell, who voted to acquit on procedural grounds, gave a scathing speech after the vote, declaring Trump practically and morally responsible for the riot. Trump's final days in office were chaotic and isolated. Twitter permanently banned him after the Capitol riot, cutting off his primary communication method. Facebook and other platforms followed suit. Major corporations announced they would stop donating to Republicans who voted to overturn the election. Trump's approval rating plummeted. Several cabinet members and White House officials resigned in protest. Trump refused to attend Biden's inauguration, breaking with tradition. On the morning of January 20, 2021, he held a departure ceremony at Joint Base Andrews before flying to Florida. He addressed a small crowd of supporters, touted his accomplishments, and promised, "We will be back in some form." He landed in Florida as a former president, the first president in over 150 years to skip his successor's inauguration. Chapter 17, Post-Presidency and Mar-a-Lago. After leaving office, Trump established his post-presidential base at Mar-a-Lago, his Palm Beach estate and private club. Unlike previous presidents who maintained relatively low profiles after leaving office, Trump remained intensely engaged in politics, particularly focused on maintaining control over the Republican Party and positioning himself for another presidential run. Trump's influence over the Republican Party remained strong despite his election loss and role in the January 6th riot. Republican officials who criticized him faced primary challenges from Trump-endorsed candidates. Those who voted to impeach him or certified the 2020 election results found themselves targeted. Representative Liz Cheney, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney and the third-ranking House Republican, was removed from leadership and eventually lost her primary after becoming a vocal Trump critic and serving on the January 6th committee. Trump launched Save America, a political action committee that raised hundreds of millions of dollars from supporters. He held rallies around the country, maintaining the campaign atmosphere even without an official campaign. He continued to claim the 2020 election was stolen, a narrative that became orthodoxy in much of the Republican Party. Polls consistently showed that a majority of Republicans believed Biden's victory was illegitimate, despite the lack of evidence. His business empire faced new scrutiny. In 2021, the Trump Organization and its CFO Alan Weisselberg were indicted on tax fraud charges by Manhattan prosecutors. Weisselberg eventually pleaded guilty and testified against the Trump Organization, which was convicted in December 2022. Trump himself faced multiple investigations into his business practices and post-presidential conduct. Chapter 18, Legal Challenges and Investigations. Trump's post-presidency was consumed by unprecedented legal challenges. He faced criminal investigations in multiple jurisdictions, civil lawsuits, and continued congressional scrutiny. The sheer volume and variety of legal issues facing a former president had no modern precedent. The most immediate concern was the January 6th investigation. The House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack held televised hearings in 2022, presenting evidence that Trump knew he had lost the election, but continued pushing false claims of fraud. Witnesses included Trump's own attorney general, campaign manager, and White House staff. The committee referred Trump to the Justice Department for potential criminal prosecution on charges including inciting insurrection and conspiracy to defraud the United States. In August 2022, FBI agents executed a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, recovering hundreds of classified documents that Trump had taken from the White House. The discovery prompted an investigation into potential violations of laws governing classified information and presidential records. Trump claimed he had declassified the documents mentally and that they were his personal property, arguments legal experts widely dismissed. In New York, Attorney General Letitia James filed a civil lawsuit in September 2022 alleging Trump and his company committed persistent fraud by inflating asset values to obtain better loan and insurance terms. The lawsuit sought $250 million in damages and sought to bar Trump from doing business in New York. A parallel criminal investigation by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg focused on hush money payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign. In Georgia, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis investigated Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in that state, particularly the recorded phone call where Trump pressured Secretary of State Raffensperger. The investigation examined whether Trump and his allies violated Georgia's laws against election interference and conspiracy. Trump's legal strategy combined aggressive litigation, public attacks on prosecutors and judges, and claims that all investigations were politically motivated witch hunts. He portrayed himself as a victim of persecution by the deep state and Democratic prosecutors. His supporters largely embraced this narrative, with his legal troubles strengthening rather than weakening his support among the Republican base. Chapter 19, the 2024 campaign announcement. On November 15, 2022, Trump announced his candidacy for president in 2024, making him the first president to seek a non-consecutive second term since Grover Cleveland in 1892. He showed that norms are not laws, that political polarization can insulate a president from accountability, and that significant portions of the electorate prioritize results over conduct. Future presidents, for better or worse, will operate in a political environment transformed by Trump's example. Chapter 23, the Trump phenomenon. Beyond policy and politics, Trump represents a cultural phenomenon that transcends traditional political analysis. He became a symbol onto which Americans projected hopes, fears, and identities. Understanding Trump requires understanding not just what he did, but what he represented to different groups of Americans. To his supporters, Trump was an authentic voice, willing to say what others wouldn't. He rejected political correctness, challenged elite consensus, and fought back against criticism. He was a successful businessman who understood how the real world worked, unlike career politicians. He put America first, and wasn't afraid to be controversial. He was entertainment, providing drama and conflict that kept supporters engaged. Most importantly, he made them feel heard after years of feeling ignored. His supporters saw his flaws as evidence of authenticity. His crude language proved he wasn't scripted. His business failures showed he was a risk-taker. His Twitter fights demonstrated he would fight for them. His refusal to apologize meant he wouldn't bow to pressure. In Trump, working-class and middle-class Americans who felt left behind by globalization, immigration, and cultural change found a champion. So, to his opponents, Trump represented an existential threat. He embodied racism, sexism, and xenophobia. He lied constantly and attacked truth itself. He damaged alliances and emboldened dictators. He enriched himself at taxpayer expense. He incited violence and refused to accept election results. He appointed judges who would roll back civil rights and reproductive freedom. In Trump, progressive Americans saw the worst impulses of American society given power. The intensity of both support and opposition was unusual in American politics. Trump inspired cult-like devotion among supporters who attended multiple rallies, decorated homes and vehicles with Trump flags and signs, and viewed him as nearly infallible. Simultaneously, he inspired fierce resistance among opponents who saw him as an unprecedented danger requiring extraordinary opposition. Trump's brand of celebrity politics merged entertainment with governance. His background in reality television prepared him for a political era where performance mattered as much as policy. He understood that attention is currency, and controversy generates attention. He created a politics of spectacle where the next shocking statement or dramatic confrontation always loomed. This approach exhausted many Americans while energizing others. His success revealed the limits of political experience and credentials. Voters who had repeatedly heard that presidential campaigns required massive fundraising, detailed policy proposals, ground organization, and discipline watched Trump win while violating every rule. His victory proved that in a media-saturated age, celebrity, branding, and message discipline on key themes could overcome traditional campaign advantages. Chapter 24: Impact on American Democracy. Trump's presidency raised fundamental questions about American democracy. Can democratic institutions withstand a president willing to test their limits? What happens when large portions of the electorate lose faith in elections? How does democracy function when citizens can't agree on basic facts? These questions will occupy scholars and citizens for years. The precedent of refusing to accept election results, if it becomes partisan routine rather than Trump-specific aberration, could prove fatal to democracy. The example of escaping accountability despite apparent wrongdoing could encourage future abuses. Conversely, Trump's presidency prompted renewed attention to democratic safeguards. Proposals for electoral reform, ethics laws, and clearer statutory limits on presidential power gained attention. Citizens became more engaged. With record turnout in 2020, the value of democratic norms became clearer when their absence was demonstrated. Chapter 25: The Man Behind the Persona. Understanding Trump requires separating the persona from the person. He cultivated a specific image through decades of media appearances, branding, and self-promotion. The reality was more complex than either the hero his supporters imagined or the villain his opponents perceived.